China making very clear today its anger at the United States, and especially at Nancy Pelosi. The House Speaker is now in South Korea after wrapping up a defiant visit to Taiwan earlier today. Just visiting made China furious, but Speaker Pelosi did more than just hold photo opportunities. She spoke when visiting Taiwan's parliament, and she spoke again when meeting with its president.
Today, our delegation, of which I'm very proud, came to Taiwan to make unequivocally clear we will not abandon our commitment to Taiwan, and we are proud of our enduring friendship.
China immediately sending a message that friendship has its price. Let's get straight to Beijing. Live now, CNN's Selena Wang. What has the reaction been, Selena?
Well, John, Pelosi may have left Taiwan, but China's retaliation is just getting started. It flew dozens of warplanes around the island when Pelosi was there, and it's also launching a series of military drills around the island. Beijing even released a map of the military drills, and if you look at it, it literally encircles the island. It's an extremely provocative move, and the map indicates that some of those drills could actually encroach on Taiwan's territorial waters. That means it's just within about 14 miles of Taiwan's shore. Taiwan is calling this a blockade that endangers regional security. It's even having to reroute some vessels in order to avoid those drills. But now the White House is saying, look, this is pretty much what we expected, and they're urging Beijing not to escalate the tensions. And we'll have to watch very closely to see just how far Beijing takes this. Because yes, we're at a moment when Xi Jinping, China's leader, cannot look weak, but he also cannot afford to have this escalate into a crisis. And we have to remember that when we see these strong reactions from Beijing, it's directed towards Taiwan, yes, and the U.S., but it's also directed to the home audience. They're trying to prove to the Chinese people that Beijing is taking very seriously what they see as a national humiliation, because they see Taiwan as a renegade province that must be reunified with the mainland, even by force, if necessary. John.
Selena Wang, live for us in Beijing. Thank you, Selena. Joining our conversation now for important insights, our CNN national security analyst, the former deputy director of national intelligence, Beth Sanner. Selena makes a key point there. China is mad. The United States and Taiwan know there's going to be a response. Where's the line? Taiwan views what's happening, live fire exercises, flying planes into its airspace. That's unacceptable, but predictable. What are you looking for to see whether this turns from a lowercase crisis into a capital boldface crisis?
I think there are two things. One are the activities, and the other is how long this lasts. So they're planning these exercises for about 4 days. I think it will go into the territorial waters or very close, and maybe, even more flyovers of the median line, which is rather unprecedented. It's really only happened once at scale. The last time there was a major high-level U.S. official during the Trump administration. And, we could see a lot more in terms of cyber, maybe more economic things, but hopefully it will die down. One school of thought says that, and another says that this is going to be the fourth major straight crisis, the last one being during the Clinton administration. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, that maybe we're going to see a lot of ratcheting up, ratcheting down, continuing, and China's just going to be a lot more boldly aggressive in asserting its sovereignty over Taiwan.
Is this a difficult incident, or is it a page-turning, game-changing incident, in the sense that if you listen to Speaker Pelosi, she didn't have to speak. She could have done photo ops. She twice spoke, knowing that her remarks would infuriate China. And both times she spoke, she said, this is a test now between dictatorship and democracy. She wants to change the conversation. We have this strategic ambiguity. We're not supposed to say publicly the United States would stand with Taiwan if Beijing tried to take it by force. She wants to just change that, clearly.
Yeah.
Will it happen?
Well, as one analyst I like to look at says, this isn't an event, this is a process. And I think that this process of our relationship has been tilting. It has been slowly turning, and I think it is. And from here, I think this is an inflection point, and we are going to see this relationship. I mean, there are rough waters ahead, no matter what, looking at all the scenarios.
Do rough waters include the possibility of war? Either by design or by miscalculation?
Certainly, there's room for miscalculation, and everybody is worried about that. I mean, I think in this instance, we are being very careful. The language coming out of the White House, very careful. So I'm a little, things can happen. There's this friction that always takes place. But I think that, the real danger is, when is Xi going to militarily attack Taiwan? And I think increasingly, in my mind, that's an inevitability, even if it's not a near-term one.
Let's get now more from Washington. CNN White House reporter Natasha Bertrand is standing by with that information. I just want to bring up this map where we're seeing the Chinese military drills, and we know that they've come very close to Taiwanese borders as well, I think 14 miles or so. Natasha, is it likely that the U.S. is going to respond, put out a statement, say what they're worried about? We knew that Xi Jinping would want to respond forcefully. I guess it's now being shown in terms of what we see on this map around Taiwan.
That's the big question at this hour, is whether the U.S. is actually going to respond with its own show of force in response to these live fire exercises that China is engaging in off the coast of Taiwan. Now, all indications at this point are that they are not going to. The National Security Council spokesperson, John Kirby, he came out this morning and he said that they expected this. They expected China to run with this playbook. It is not something that they're necessarily surprised by, and that they're essentially going to watch how this all plays out. So in other words, it does not seem as though the U.S. is going to engage in a direct kind of confrontation with the Chinese, or something that could potentially spiral out of control. That is not something that the U.S. wants at this moment. However, Kirby did say that the U.S. is going to continue to operate in the air and in the seas as they have for many decades, and that the U.S. is not going to change its behavior as a result of the Chinese provocations here. At the same time, Kirby said that the U.S. is not going to engage in its own kind of saber rattling and is not going to try and provoke the Chinese in any way. Essentially, the message here is that they're going to watch and see how this plays out. And of course, if China were to make any overly aggressive moves directly against Taiwan, for example, kind of crossing any lines that the U.S. perhaps did not anticipate, then it reserves the right, of course, to defend Taiwan in any way that the U.S. deems necessary. They have not, of course, taken that off the table, and the president has actually said many times that it is the United States' responsibility to defend Taiwan in the event of a kind of, a major aggression by China against the island. So it remains to be seen how the U.S. is going to respond to this. They have been discussing internally what the potential options are here if China does kind of cross a line. But again, they are not viewing any of this as unexpected. They have said repeatedly that they always anticipated that China would respond in some way, given all of the threats that Chinese President Xi Jinping has put out there in recent weeks ahead of this trip by Pelosi. And right now they're just seeing how it's going to play out.
Yeah, and a very strong language by the Chinese in the last few days. One of the things that really struck me was, the military saying we will bury the enemy. And Selena just also reiterated the fact that this isn't actually retaliation, perhaps, against the United States per se, but rather on Taiwan. How concerned is the U.S. right now that there could be a target down the line, or do you think it's going to be contained to showing sort of strength around Taiwan and showing the world that, this is their sovereignty, this is what they think in terms of the one China policy, something that we've been hearing in terms of rhetoric from Xi Jinping for quite some time?
I think that the main concern that the White House has right now is that something accidental happens, more so than any kind of potential direct kind of confrontation between, for example, U.S. forces who are operating in the Western Pacific and Chinese forces who are conducting these drills. What they're concerned by is some kind of miscalculation that spirals out of control. That is something that John Kirby, again, the National Security Council spokesman, has made very clear in recent days, that because the Chinese, in his estimation, don't really seem to be thinking strategically here and seem to be reacting kind of emotionally to this visit by Pelosi, then something could go terribly wrong and China could miscalculate. Now, the U.S., of course, they have said that they do anticipate that this could go on for quite a while. It could go on over the horizon, as Kirby said recently, and that they expect China to not drop this anytime soon because they view this trip by Pelosi as a major provocation. But at the same time, there's also an understanding here in the U.S. that China's president doesn't necessarily want a huge escalation and confrontation with the United States right now. And that is something that, again, if they cross that line, they could very well get. Eleni.
All right, Natasha Bertrand, good to see you. Thank you.